Zach Golden just purchased a film, and he's gonna tell you why. Zach Golden's The Golden Collection.
We're over 100 years into making narrative films, from The Great Train Robbery, released in 1903, to Jackass Best and Last, which came out this week. There have been tens of thousands of films that have come and gone, and the overwhelming majority of them are likely to be forgotten. That's simply the nature of the art. Every generation produces mountains of work, but only a tiny fraction survives in the cultural conversation. Most films disappear because they were independent productions with almost no marketing behind them. They might have found a second life on VHS shelves at a local video store, maybe gained a cult following, and then quietly slipped into obscurity. But on the island of forgotten cinema, in the penthouse of forgotten studio productions, sitting on the throne is the 1972 nihilist western Cry for Me, Billy, starring Cliff Potts, Maria Yolanda Agallo, and Harry Dean Stanton, directed by William Graham. This isn't just an obscure movie, it's almost as if the film just vanished. You can't walk into a store and buy it. Finding clips online is difficult enough just to get a sense of what it looks like. And as of recording this, there are only 5 comments on Letterboxd. During an episode of the Video Archives podcast, Gala Avery even remarked that Cry for Me, Billy couldn't be found online, not even on torrent sites. When film lovers, archivists, and pirates all fail to locate something, you've entered a very strange corner of cinema history. And yet, somehow, ya boy found it. The experience of watching it almost became part of the movie itself. You know you're in for something special when the very first image you see is a VHS rip playing from a DVD menu, and immediately you realize you're watching a copy of a copy of a copy. I mean, the image is muddy. The colors have long since faded. The audio only comes through, or at least back when I found it, the audio only came through the left side of the speaker, and halfway through the film, it skips around so badly because of the DVD and the quality of the rip. It skipped around so badly. There were entire scenes that just were completely ruined by the skipping that was going on. And for most people, that would probably be enough to give up and just not give that film the light of day. But being an editor, I couldn't help myself. I started treating the movie like a little mini restoration project. I found a German dubbed upload that briefly appeared on YouTube before disappearing again. And I borrowed pieces from that version to fill in the missing sections. I rebuilt the missing right audio channel. I cleaned the sound as best I could. I pulled back some of the lost detail from the image. And little by little, I pieced together the closest thing I could to a watchable version. And then I burned it on a DVD. I designed my own cover art inspired by the original poster showing Cliff Potts' character Billy approaching a group of unsuspecting thugs. I went to CVS and printed the cover, slipped it into a DVD case, and now that DVD sits proudly on my shelf among the rest of my collection. There's something oddly satisfying about rescuing a film that almost nobody remembers. It's probably the closest I'll ever come to being a film archivist. Now, was the movie worth all that effort? Honestly, I think so. Not because it's a forgotten masterpiece, but because it's one of the strangest examples of studio filmmaking I've ever seen. For better or worse, Cry for Me, Billy feels incredibly authentic. It's dirty, it's muddy, it's dry, it's slow, it's brutal. The film constantly keeps you at arm's length. It almost refuses to entertain you in the conventional sense. There are very few aesthetically striking moments, very few sweeping John Ford landscapes, very few heroic close-ups, very little cinematic polish at all. In fact, the movie almost feels like the missing evolutionary link between a low-budget independent Western and someone accidentally filming the actual Old West with a documentary camera. Everything feels awkwardly real, if that makes sense. The film opens with a lone drifter riding toward town across the horizon in silhouette. There's almost no music, just wind, hooves, nature. The soundtrack waits patiently before finally introducing music as the character Billy arrives in town, where Native American prisoners have been rounded up under military guard. Billy offers them water despite being threatened by soldiers. And a few seconds later, he returns, and they're all dead. The Native Americans were all massacred. It's a devastating image. Without saying much at all, the film communicates an entire history. There was a people here, there was a culture here, and now there's not. One young Comanche woman named Flower escapes the massacre, however, and Billy chooses to protect her. And from there, the second act becomes surprisingly intimate. The relationship between Billy and Flower develops with almost an Adam and Eve quality. It's stripped down literally to two people surviving together in nature while an increasingly hostile civilization surrounds them. And everywhere they go, they're reminded exactly what that civilization thinks of Native Americans. And nearly every group of men they encounter talks about Flower as though she isn't even human. And again, the threat becomes the same. They want to rape her. And the film doesn't sensationalize these conversations at all. It doesn't romanticize frontier life. There's no charismatic speeches, no witty dialogue, no larger than life heroes. Everyone feels exhausted. Everyone feels dirty. Everything feels morally rotten. There's an honesty to the ugliness that is hard to watch, but I genuinely admire it. And at the same time, I don't think the filmmaking quite reaches the literary ambitions the story seems to be aiming for. I could feel the Shakespearean stories hiding underneath the screenplay. I could feel tragedy trying to emerge. Like I could see the symbolism in Billy and Flower representing something larger than themselves, but emotionally, where I was in my headspace, I never quite got where I think the director was wanting me to go. I never felt like I truly knew Billy. I never felt like I truly understood Flower. They're more like ideas or than fully realized people. And because of that, I don't think their emotional arcs land as powerfully as they could have. But still, when Billy is beaten nearly to death and Flower is brutally raped, the film absolutely succeeds in one respect. It makes you angry. By that point, I wasn't invested because of the romance anymore. I was invested because I wanted justice. I wanted these men to get exactly what they deserved. But then you remember, this movie came out in 1972. America was still deep in the Vietnam era. And frankly, optimism had largely disappeared from American cinema. The heroic Western was dying, anti-Westerns were taking its place, and Cry for Me, Billy has absolutely no interest in giving you the satisfaction that a traditional Western would. Yes, the thugs eventually die, but it doesn't feel victorious. It doesn't feel cathartic. Billy doesn't walk off into the sunset. Justice doesn't heal anyone. The violence changes nothing. And then in its final 30 seconds, the film reveals what it has already been since the beginning of the movie. Billy is shot in the back and he dies, just like that. The end. No grand duel, no heroic sacrifice, no triumphant ending, just meaningless death. It's a nihilist tragedy masquerading as a Western. And in that final moment, it almost feels closer to Shakespeare than to John Ford. It's obvious why Cry for Me, Billy never became a classic. It's too bleak, it's too slow, too uncomfortable, too interested in dismantling the mythology of the American West instead of celebrating it. And yet, that's exactly why I find it fascinating. This represents one of those incredibly rare moments where a major studio financed something so small, so uncompromising, and so anti-commercial that history almost erased it completely. It's a studio picture that somehow became lost media. Those cases are incredibly rare. So while I wouldn't call Cry for Me, Billy a masterpiece by any means, I would absolutely call it worthwhile. Sometimes watching forgotten movies isn't about discovering hidden perfection. Sometimes it's just about discovering forgotten conversations. It's about seeing a studio take a creative risk that audiences rejected. It's about understanding where cinema has been, not just celebrating where it succeeded. Does that make sense? And I think for that reason, if you ever come across Cry for Me Billy, whether through a restored release someday or by sheer luck the way I did, I genuinely think it's worth watching. If nothing else, you'll experience one of the strangest ghosts in American film history. If you like these kind of videos, be sure to do all the YouTube favors. It actually does help, believe it or not. And tune in next time where we talk about another film in my collection here at Zach Golden's The Golden Collection.